Should we geoengineer the planet? Should we change our planet to reduce problems? Can we stop a hurricane? There are physical situations when the sand and the dust coming off of Africa is so dense that it actually impacts visibility in the Caribbean and the Greater Antilles. And that also reduces hurricane development. Are there other ways we can reduce hurricane development? Can we seed the clouds so that maybe they rain more before they accumulate too much? Of course, the rain continues the evaporation, so that may or may not help. There are lots of plans where science might be able to interfere with hurricanes. We might be able to interfere with rain events, seed the atmosphere so that it tends to increase evaporation and hence rain, or seed the atmosphere so that it dissipates the formulation of water vapor in the air. Can we change the weather? Should we change the weather? Can we change where our mountain ranges are? Should we stop the rising sea level? Should we geoengineer the planet? In the 1800s, the Mississippi River was an enormously important transportation pathway. But the entrance to the Mississippi River in the Gulf of Mexico was only open for maybe 4 months out of the year. The Mississippi River carries a huge sediment level, and that sediment would deposit and block the entrance channels until a good storm wiped it out. So 2 engineers competed. One went down there and dredged a channel, but his dredging was filled up with sand as quickly as he could remove it. Another went out and narrowed the channel so that the water speed, the velocity was higher going out of the channel, because of course water is incompressible or almost incompressible. So if I close the channel, there's going to have to be fluid moving faster in order to get the same volume of water out. So they modified the entrance to the Mississippi River. They tried 2 different paths. The dredging didn't work well, but we still dredge today, which is kind of silly. And the other one, which constricted the flow to make it faster, just like, you know, when you put your thumb over the hose outside to make the water squirt, same concept, dredged the channel automatically. That was geoengineering the planet. Was it good? We build levees all up and down our major rivers to avoid floods. That changes the natural sequence of things. Floods actually replace nutrients in the soil, making the soil more likely to be able to support life. And if I build a levee too high and a flood tears it down, now my water is falling from an enormous height onto the areas around the levee, drowning everything in sight. In the Mississippi flood that we looked at in 1927, I don't know if you remember or not, one of the levees, well, several of the levees were intentionally dynamited so that the river would go that direction. Others collapsed under the pressure of the river. One of them that they cut a small pathway through ended up becoming huge when tons of water came down. That happened in the Salton Sea as well. And they created environmental disasters in the Salton Sea by allowing a lot of the Colorado River to force its way into Southern California when they built a small channel that widened itself in a flood. Should we geoengineer the planet? Should we play with these things? It's not at all clear that we know enough about what we're doing. I have suggested what I call environmental engineering, which allows geoengineering only when it follows a normal environmental pattern that the Earth already has. So building a levee against A flat plane would not be environmental engineering, but if the river cut a channel and there were two wide bluffs across which that river went through, then building a levee along those bluffs would be environmental engineering because it would exacerbate what the earth was already trying to do. So if we are going to do geoengineering, what are the guidelines? Should we impose population controls? This is a huge issue for environmental concerns, but is it ethical? China's policy seemed to work and was supported by a large majority of the people there. In the 1970s, they had a two-child policy. In 1979, it changed to a one-child policy, which was modified already by the mid-80s to allow rural families a second child if the first was female, so that they had a male to continue farming the land. In 2016, they went back to a two-child policy for all. Is this ethical? I like part of what China did in terms of ethics. If you broke the rules and you got pregnant and had a child that wasn't accounted for, you were forced to pay for its social costs. So in essence, the government was saying a family gets social support for them and one child. And if you want a second child, you have to pay for it yourself. No trouble with that at all. Forced abortion, social shaming because you have a larger family, have lots of ethical problems with those. So I think there might be ways to impose population controls without doing unethical things. We'll have to decide that. Birth control pills are inexpensive. So it's easy to provide them to large portions of the world. At the same point in time, women have not been using them forever, and it's not clear their long-term implications. Some of the original birth control pills, for example, caused cancer in a significant portion of the women who took them. Historically, however, countries have encouraged population growth. They've given tax breaks. They wanted more people to be able to do more work, to have a larger workforce. Isn't that the same thing as imposing population controls? So as long as the government's already been in the business of trying to decide the size of our families, does it make any difference if it's for or against? I don't know. You might not have thought of this one before, but we are at a technological place where we may be able to colonize other planets. And there are efforts to do that. But think about this. We would be the invasive species. Invasive species in this country alone have destroyed entire ecosystems. If we colonize other planets, we could be causing environmental disasters. Is that ethical? Shouldn't we study a history of invasive species? See how well they adapted or changed the environment? You guys are all used to invasion. What was that called? Can't remember the book where the Martian invasion occurs. Our Bradbury story, Ray Bradbury. Martians attack and they are taking over our planet. And right before we're all dead from the war, a bug gets them and they all die because they're not used to our bacteria. I can't remember the name of that book. Anyway, I'm pretty sure it was Ray Bradbury. Should we colonize other planets? If we take over and we kill a species, even though we don't mean to, is that like war? Because they won't be the same species we are. They won't be humans. But they may be just as important. This question is being asked a lot in different circumstances, and it kind of amazes me. Should we stop doing science? And the question here is, are we at a place now where we've done enough and additional benefits might not be worth the risk? And this takes us back to things like, should we geoengineer the planet? Have we done too much environmental damage already? So should we just correct what we've done? Or should we continue to make advances that might unknowingly create additional environmental disasters? If we create additional synthetic life forms, are we risking putting humans in a difficult situation where they may be killed? Have we learned enough mathematics so that we don't need to do math anymore? Or are there still fundamental issues we need to address? Of course, I think there are, but a lot of people in the world don't. It's a very difficult question, this one is, and I cannot answer it for you.